Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today for our CDS export webinar. Just waiting for all the participants to join. That's great. Okay, so today we'll be delivering a webinar regarding CDS exports and going through information regarding the export side and the difference between CDS and Chief. So we'll go into that in more detail as we go through the webinar. We'll just start with some introductions. So if you just move to the next slide. That's great. So on the webinar today, you have myself. My name is Mitch Perks. I'm the head of operations, and I've been with Chamber Customs for around 3 years.
I'm Iman Janquito. I had consultancy and training, and I was here from day zero. It was about, what, 4 or 5 years now?
I'd say so. Thank you very much. And also joining us on the session today is Marika. Hello, so Marika is Operations Assistant at Chamber Customs. She'll be managing the Q&A today on the webinar. So if anybody has any questions that they'd like answering, please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom chat. We'll also be recording this webinar. The recording's already started, so just to make you all aware of that. So just to give a brief introduction, so we are Chamber Customs. Chamber Customs are experts in complex nature of international imports and exports. We deliver brokerage, we also deliver training and also consultancy. We are a compliant and efficient service that process customs declaration, also transit. And our knowledgeable teams are actually based across the whole of the UK. So the service is delivered locally by your local Chamber of Commerce. We support small to large businesses who are importing and exporting and have specialist knowledge in specific procedures and subjects related to international trade. So the agenda for today, we'll be going through Chief closure, which I'm sure all of you that are attending today are aware of, especially those that are currently importing. We'll go through the CDS export journey. That's when I'll hand over to Emmanuel to go through that in more detail. We'll discuss how we can support the move and also what HMRC are doing to support the transition. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll move into a Q&A where we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. And again, reminding you that you can use the Q&A function on the Zoom link. So just to give you kind of a brief overview of why Chief is being closed down, and just to give you a bit of an overview on the key dates and the impact. So in regards to Chief, HMRC announced, I believe 6 or 7 years ago now, it's quite some time, that they were going to discontinue the Chief system. Chief has been around for over 30 years. And for those of you that have had first-hand experience in using it, will know that as time's gone on, that the system became quite old and quite slow in the fact that it couldn't cope with the volume that we were putting through the system across the UK. So as time's gone on, the new system of CDS has been created and developed. The timeframes have moved slightly, or quite significantly, from when it was originally proposed to where we are now. And in terms of that, the key dates was that the initial move for exports was the 30th of November. That HMRC have now announced that that's been postponed to the 31st of March 2024. So we've actually got an additional 5 or 6 months there to transition over to CDS. For those of you that was involved in the import switchover, similar kind of thing happened where we were granted extensions to meet that deadline. So the impact, so obviously Chief and NES, so the National Export System, will be closing finally on the 31st of March 2024. you can no longer submit import declarations into Chief, only export. So kind of phase 1 has been complete, and we're now moving on to the final phase of that process. So the kind of action required is that the declarants and associated traders should be prepared for the CDS transition. It isn't optional. We are kind of dual running at the moment. So we are using Chief and CDS, and we've got that luxury to phase the approach and move across. But by the 31st of March, you know, it will be closed, and we don't believe, and we're not under any kind of illusion that there will be any extensions from the 31st of March. So we have to be prepared. The whole purpose of today's webinar is to provide you that information and let you know kind of where we are currently, what we can do with CDS, and what we're kind of waiting for from a HMRC perspective. So CDS benefits, I mean, there's quite a lot in terms of what CDS can do for us. It's aligned with the UK Trades Plan, and that's really important. In terms of a legal compliance in the EU and UK, that's a really key point here, that it's the most up-to-date system, it's the most up-to-date and developed program with HMRC. And that's the key benefit here to moving across. With the Chief system, HMRC are not prioritizing the updates, they're not prioritizing the system development. Therefore, responsiveness is key. You will receive a much quicker response when using CDS, and also having good reliance and reliability. Those of you, again, that have had first-hand in using the Chief system will know that it can be unpredictable at times. There's been times when the system has crashed and it's kind of locked declarations. So CDS is kind of up and coming with that live responsiveness. It's instant reaction to when you submit a declaration, and it's really good to see how quick and effective the new platform actually is. In terms of CDS readiness, this is as of the 25th of October. I remember delivering a very similar webinar around a year ago, and there was a lot more red boxes than there is now. So the majority is green and live, which is fantastic from an import perspective. It's all kind of live and good to go. From an export perspective, there is still some work to be done with inventory linking declarations. So that's your deep sea, air and road. That is currently under testing by HMRC. We are awaiting a further update from HMRC to give us some timeline of when that will be available for us to test from our side and also to release live. In terms of excise, currently that isn't available yet, and we don't actually have a timeline or any further information from HMRC of when excise movements can be submitted through CDS. But what can be is all RoRo and GVMS movements, and also any declaration that is for merchandise and baggage. So we're making good progress, and actually merchandise and baggage is one of the most recent updates from HMRC. So it's looking good. There's just kind of the final phase to complete before that deadline to allow all declarations to be submitted on CDS. So in terms of planning your move to CDS, from a trader standpoint, from a customs agent's perspective, got to make sure that you have CDS ready software, especially if you're self-representing. Or have a CDS ready customs agent if you're delegating the work out to an agent. It's really important that you have updated instructions, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in detail when I hand over to Emmanuel. And the reason for that is there's quite a lot of miscommunication out there that CDS and Chief kind of are the same and all the information remains the same. And although there is similarities, it is very different. And in terms of your instructions that you would provide a customs agent, there's a lot more elements that would need to be completed. There's a lot more information that we need clarifying to submit a declaration through CDS. So we will go into that in more detail as we move through this webinar. In terms of considerations, timing is a big one, making sure that we're ahead of the game, making sure that you are prepared ahead of that deadline in March. systems changes and updates. So internally, if you are a trader that does your own customs declarations, it's making sure that your software is CDS ready and you have all of the system updates and changes in place, ready to submit declarations through CDS. Communication, ensuring that you're communicating with your customs agent if you're moving across to CDS, and also your customers if you're a customs agent as well, ensuring they're aware of the transition. And finally, we would say authorizations, making sure that you have all the correct authorizations in place for imports and exports to submit the declarations through CDS instead of Chief. So the CDS export journey, we've broken this down into 3 stages. I'm now going to hand over to Emmanuel, who's going to go into this in more detail. So over to you.
Thank you, Mitch. I
Thank
think
you.
it's very interesting to see how how much CDS has progressed from when we started. We've been following at Chamber Customs the CDS journey from day one, and all the reasons that you listed are all very valid. Let's not forget as well that CDS was a requirement when the UK exited the common market, because we now have a position which is quite peculiar in the UK, where for some of our some parts of the UK, basically GB uses the UK tariff, but Northern Ireland has to follow tariff, so the EU tariff, and CDS is able to cope with 2 tariffs at the same time, whereas poor old Chief couldn't do that. That's really, really important. The other things in terms of system responsiveness, which is great, is that CDS is synchronous. So you get an immediate response. You submit your question, you submit your declaration, you get an immediate answer. You don't get a batch answer, which is what we were getting with Chief. And that is really in line with modern technology. It's not without glitches, it's not without hiccups, as we know in any new system, and there are still some issues that are being ironed out. So I think that we have a responsibility as compliant traders to give the system a chance, because no matter how much testing is done, you have to continue to use the system and to put different things through to find out those fringe cases, and that's why what you said before is fundamental. We are dual running. They've extended the switch off of Chief until March. That doesn't mean that we have to wait. It gives us longer to have that kind of cushion so that we can fall back onto Chief if something doesn't work, like excise, as you mentioned before. But we should move as soon as possible to give the system a chance, so that we don't find out in March that we have problems. We need to start now, because whilst problems are ironed out, we can still use Chief as a backup system. But in order to use CDS, there are steps that we need to take. I believe that most people on this call will have done this already. But if you haven't done that yet, you will need to register. And in order to register for CDS, you will need an EORI number. Clearly, you need to be a trader. If you haven't got, if you haven't done any registration for the government gateway for your company before today, I'm sure that we can help you, but I'd be surprised. In any case, you need an EORI, you need your UTR, you need your business details, and that would give you access to the government gateway. Through the government gateway, once you have that login and password for your company, you can actually register for CDS and access the financial dashboard that will give you various things. Mainly is import related, but that bullet point there is really, really key. So with CDS, we have a different way of handling messages from customs. So when you have a route, so when you have a route 1, a route 2, when your goods are stopped for inspection, be that inspection documentary, physical, or post clearance, HMRC will ask you, or Border Force, or any of the agencies, they can ask you for information, and you can provide that information through a secure platform that you can access via your government gateway. That's new. we are moving in the modern times. We've gone away from fax numbers, which is quite good in 2023. It's you can only access it through the system, so you have to register for CDS through your government gateway. Now, Mitch mentioned this, and I don't think it can be stressed enough. CDS is quite different from Chief. Chief was introduced with the idea of the SAD harmonization in 1988. So we're actually looking at, if you remember how data was structured, it was structured in boxes. We had one box was one piece of information, and we've gone on and on and on, and I'm sure that plenty of you will still remember that certain things go in certain boxes. CDS moves away from that concept and is working in line with a different type of harmonization that was done across Europe, and which the UK followed and is continuing to follow because it's very helpful trading with partners in Europe, whether we are in the common market or not. So the data today is structured in 8 data groups, and these 8 data groups actually share, they answer certain questions, all the questions that you might want to ask when your goods are moving. So why the goods are moving, what authorizations you've got, the parties involved, financial implications, the route and and the destination of the goods, the description and all the details about the goods, and values, and all the transport information. So you don't need to remember this by heart, but it's very useful to know how the information is structured, because when you look for guidance, this is how you're going to find it. Now, different software providers will present the information in different ways. If you're a trader, you might be asked for this information in different places. If you are a broker, you might need to find this information, but it's useful to know how it's structured so you can find guidance when you're unsure about one of these topics. I don't think I will surprise you if I tell you that there is about 20% more in terms of data points than what we provided to Chief before. Various reasons for that. Remember that one of the responsibilities of HMRC, together with all the border agencies, is to keep safety and security under control and to monitor the traffic of goods for financial reasons, but also for all the all the other reasons for the national security. So there is more that we need to provide, and that's where we need to be ready. So what we've done, and if you don't want to follow any other part of this webinar, this is the slide that you really need to keep in your mind. So this is, if you like, the delta. This is the list of additional data points that you will need to provide. The additional data points compared to a Chief or a C88 SAD or EX1 declaration, however you want to call it. So in terms of mandatory, we have transport charges method of payment. This existed before, but it was not mandatory. It is now mandatory. So you will need to find out this information. And we'll talk about these in more detail. Carrier information is mandatory. You will need to provide the details of who is physically moving the goods. Route countries was there, but was not enabled in Chief. It is mandatory in CDS. We have to provide information of destination, route, and origin, route, and destination of the goods. Gross mass, again, was something that was available, but we only used it in certain circumstances in Chief. In CDS, it's a mandatory piece of information. And then we have some other things. Now, CDS references for authorizations. Now, Mitch mentioned this before. You have to watch your authorizations. This is really important. For reasons that, if you like, one day I can go into, Chief had a list of IORI numbers for companies, and Chief knew what authorization each company had. And it was a very one-to-one relationship. Company A had, company A had authorizations for certain things and chief knew. In CDS, it doesn't work like that. In CDS, you have to explain what authorizations you want to use, because you have the ability of having multiple parties. And I can see some questions coming in about, when you're doing declarations for other people. So you could be using different parties on the same authorizations. You need to quote those authorization numbers. But please be careful, because the CDS authorization numbers are in a different format. So if you have an old authorization letters, let's say, for example, for outward processing, you might need to call your supervising office or your reference point in HMRC and get the CDS authorization number, because that will be different. It'll be a longer number. Nature of transaction has become mandatory. So not only are you doing a permanent export, but you have to explain why. Is it a sale? Is it a hire? Is it a loan? Is it a return? And then we have a small but big point. We have updated customs procedures. Now, the old concept of CPC has changed. We now have a more of a mix and match approach, and we have links in this presentation for you to review. Now, we don't have the time in 60 minutes to go through all of the procedures, but some of the codes have changed, and notably the main code that will have changed is our beloved 10.00001, which was the permanent export on the chief, 10.00001 without any VAT being applied, and that's changed. That's become 10.40.000. I think it makes sense, but it's something for you to note. In terms of guarantee details, very rare for export. Additional fiscal references, very rare. We are talking of onward supply relief for goods provided out of Northern Ireland. So it's quite a fringe case, but it is possible that you need to provide it. So it's not tragic, but there is more information, and a broker may not be able to process your declaration on CDS without having that information. So this is a conversation, and probably this is an answer to one of the questions that has just come in. What do we need to provide to a broker or a carrier that's completing the declaration for us? Be prepared, on top of what you provide already, that information on these bullet points will become mandatory. But of course, the detail will depend on a conversation between you and whoever is filling in that declaration for you. Interestingly, there are some options. Additional supply chain actors, you can list other people on your declaration. You can list a lot more people. Freight forwarders, you can list warehouse keepers, you can list different people such as buyers and sellers on top of importer and exporter. This is not mandatory at the moment, but it gives us the possibility of really making this whole chain transparent. And since we are moving to a paperless world, also given the latest changes in legislation in the UK and in other countries, we are able to declare and put on this documentation different parties, and that makes our trade transparent. A small gift, we have an additional field for traders reference. So we have both the LRN, a local reference number, and an additional traders reference. This is a small thing, but I'm sure that those of us in this group who are technical and have been doing declarations will welcome, this as a big thing. And finally, we are able much more easily to use a commercially agreed exchange rate when there is an exchange rate agreed between buyer and seller, rather than the official HMRC rate. This again should simplify a lot of the workings that we see a lot of when we're forced to use one exchange rate, which is not what was used in the trade. So that's the delta. And then I would like to go through a little bit more of the detail of what this means. So the transport charges method of payment, well, you can only answer this question to the extent known. if you are a broker, if you are a third party. Generally speaking, this is not a rule set in stone, but generally speaking, if you're using an Inco term that starts with D, that would suggest that the price of transport is included in what has been paid on the invoice for the goods, which means that actually whichever method of payment was used to pay the invoice, for example, bank transfer, would also be used for the transport charges. And then for E, like X works, or F, like FCA, FOB, etc., is simply not prepaid because it's paid separately. That's one approach that you can use. The other approach is to clearly discuss between the trader and the broker which is the right answer to this question. As we always said, when you have something that is optional, like this was before, you could leave it blank and be compliant. When something is not optional, you must answer it, but when you have to provide an answer, it has to be correct, even if it might seem a small piece of information. I think this is a rather big change, carrier data, this means that if you're using a freight forwarder to move your goods, you have to mention who they are. If they are based in the UK, you can simply quote their EORI number. If they are not registered as an EORI or they're not based in the UK, you will need to provide name and address. This becomes quite strange sometimes when you are sending goods via air and you end up providing that the carrier is British Airways if you're not using any intermediaries. But it's got to be provided. Now, something that has raised a lot of questions is the fact that on the export declaration, you have to provide both the identity of the means of transport at departure and the identity of the means of transport crossing the border, because this can be different. And we've highlighted some words in bold because I find that quite interesting. Now, these two data elements are mandatory, and there are some oddities. So you actually have to fill these in. Is mandatory piece of information. However, the guidance then says where known, which kind of contradicts this point a little bit. So the practical approach to this is to actually declare what you know at the point of filing the declaration. And if you don't know at the point of filing the declaration, you might have to actually state that it's unknown at that point. That doesn't mean that you're free to leave it blank. You have to put unknown, which means that you will fill it in at a later stage. This is okay. This is understood, but you might be receiving queries from HMRC about that. So the good practice would be to declare things, to obtain that information every time that is possible, and to put it on the declaration. If it's not known, you can say unknown, and you know that you can update this declaration up to the point of export. But things shouldn't cross the border with that left as unknown. We see a lot of that. I say, Mitch, you must see a lot of that as well in your team.
Yeah, absolutely. For clarification, why do we think that HMRC make this a mandatory field?
That is a very good question, and I can tell you that, as you know, but I wanted to share with everybody, as BCC, with British Chamber of Commerce, we are lobbying the colleagues at HMRC because for the vast majority of movements which move via RoRo, so roll on, roll off, we need to file a GMR, a goods movement record, and on that goods movement record, we have to declare again all the information about the vehicle. So something that British Chambers is lobbying HMRC for is not to ask information twice, because we believe that it doesn't help trade, it just hinders it. And the information that you might have, as you know, leading a team of people who file tens of thousands of declarations, the information that we know when we start the declaration is not as accurate as when the truck is crossing the border. So it's too soon, but it is there because CDS is based on a data set that is shared across Europe, and other countries have slightly different systems. So I think that requirement has been surpassed by the introduction of GVMS. It might still be relevant for all the inventory linked ones where a GMR is not required, and then you might have you need that information for safety and security reasons, because you know HMRC and the border force agencies need to know on what vehicle the goods are going to be located. So if it's on this ferry, you have this truck that contains this box, you want to know all that information to locate it.
They'll want to cross-reference it with manifests as well, won't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for inventory, you don't have another place, but for non-inventory, for all the road stuff, which incidentally is the vast majority of what gets done, then this information could be completely replaced. So there is another question in terms of what transport charges need to be declared. They always need to be declared. It doesn't matter what Incoterms you use. You actually have to declare the transport charges all the time. It's not a dependent field. It just needs to be filled in. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Oh, sorry. One question has just come in, just so that we can answer it whilst we are on this subject. So the detail of the departure needs to be entered. Yes, you need to provide in terms of the carrier, the freight forwarder, the company that is moving the goods. That's the carrier. And then in these fields, departure is the identity of the means of transport. So it could be the license plate of the truck that is moving the goods. That's that's 7.7. And then 7.14 is the active means of transport. So because the truck will be on a ferry, the active means of transport crossing the border is the ferry. That's the kind of logic that you have. Okay, so that's wonderful. Some more information in terms of the route. You have country of dispatch. That should be quite easy for us because we are an island, and so our country of dispatch will be GB. That's nice and easy. GB as the code for the United Kingdom. The country of destination, you should know that because you should know where your goods are going. So country dispatch, country destination should be easy to find. Now, country or countries of routing, this is where you can make a choice. If you're absolutely sure of the route that your goods are following, then you provide the route. You provide the countries that will be crossed to get to destination. If you're unsure, the minimum requirement is that the route includes the origin and the destination. So basically, you could easily say that the country of routing as a minimum should be UK to destination. That is a compliant approach. You don't have to say anymore. Remember, if you provide information, it must be accurate. And so, be careful with the information that you provide there. Now, so some interesting changes here in our beloved box 44. A lot of you will remember that box 44 was a complicated box. It was the box on the SAD form that ended up being the catch-all for everything else. So as the requirements evolved, box 44 became more and more complicated, including all sorts of things. So it's no surprise that the approach in CDS was to split box 44 into different data elements. That's what they're called now. And so we have a specific data element for additional information. That's data element 2.2. So you will find in additional information things like I don't know, you will find things like single transport of contract. You will find if you're doing any authorization by declaration, the period of discharge, any additional information like that, reason for processing, etc., would be quoted in there. All the document codes, what used to be the DS codes, so your valuation document, your licenses, your permits would go in data element 2.3, and then all your authorization and approvals, for example, outward processing authorization, customs warehousing authorization, would go in data element 339. Now, that's fine in terms of filing the declaration. Is just the mapping has changed, but the information existed before, so you shouldn't be too surprised. One of the things that we like very much of CDS is how much better integrated it is with the trade tariff. So you will be able to interrogate the trade tariff, look up a commodity code, get a list of the codes that apply to that commodity code, and be reassured that those codes work on CDS. Some of you might remember that for a certain period of time, the tariff information was no longer in sync with chief development. So we used to have codes quoted on the trade tariff to declare a certain certificate or a certain license, and those codes were not compatible anymore with chief. Thankfully, that's gone now. The trade tariff is fully aligned with CDS. Now, in order for you to file compliant declarations, you cannot rely on the chief knowledge that you had. This is a message that was given very heavily when we started this journey, and I would like to reiterate it now. You can't rely on what you used to know and what you used to do. You have to double check. This is a good time to take stock of what information you're declaring. Remember that we had an update to HS codes recently. Remember that the licenses required for certain products have changed, and the codes to indicate those documents might have changed as well. So this is a good time to review your information before you provide instructions to your broker, or before you key in the information yourself into a system. And if you are a broker, this is a good time to ask your customers to check, because the information that they provided you previously may no longer be up to date. There is plenty of information online, and there is, well, you can see it in whichever way you like. You can say that's excellent that there is so much information. It can also be overwhelming when you actually look at how much information there is out there from HMRC, beautifully written guidance, new guidance, lots of it. So you need to learn to navigate this stuff, and we can offer support with that. Completing export customs declaration, we'll give you the link in a second, is, if you like, a collection of links that shows you all the different pages that you might want to read, and you know, it's something that you might want to look at. How long does it take to get ready for CDS? That depends on the scale and complexity of your organization. Now, Mitch, we had lots of clients moving over. What do you think? What's your view in terms of speed of converting to CDS? Does it have to be difficult?
It doesn't have to be difficult, no. And I think it's I think a lot of traders feel comfortable with chief, so it's quite kind of, you know, they know the deadline's in 6 months. So when we approach that subject of saying, look, can we move across to CDS, it's quite comfortable to say, well, actually, we don't want to go across to CDS. And also we face issues from hauliers. We have that pushback at the moment where there's people that are actually down at the borders that are saying, well, we don't want to accept CDS export declarations yet. That is a problem we face, and unfortunately, they don't really have a choice anymore. We've got to get into that habit of moving across to CDS for exports. Yes, of course, for deep sea, air, inventory, and excise, we know that we can't do that yet. But the majority of the traffic that goes through my department a high volume of that is RoRo. So actually, we can transition our customers very easily. It's just educating traders and also hauliers and people at the border that we can do it quite simply for them RoRo movements.
Yeah,
But I think there is a comfortable position at the minute because we
it
know
is.
that we've got that extension.
There's a bit of a like the people being afraid of what they don't know. But there are advantages to CDS, and the speed that you mentioned before and the clarity, I think, is definitely one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, the conclusion of this slide is like, this is a good time to review whether you want to do this in-house, you want to do your own declarations, depending on your volume, depending on your complexity, or you want to use an accredited customs agent. That, you know, there are advantages and disadvantages, there are costs and there are investments, but it's not a slightly different system. CD. This is, I'm not going to walk you through, but this is the list of links that you can actually, these are all clickable, and you can see, you know, there's plenty of guidance available. This is the top, this is the one I was mentioning with the list of all the additional guidance. So I know that, so for some of this, there is like a correlation matrix for export. So I think we just had a question of, is there a new CPC code for 10.00098? The best answer I can give you is have a look at this 4-digit to 3-digit procedure code and have a look at the 10.00098 and then see how that maps to the new stuff. And then once you found the new code, read the guidance for the new code and the new additional code and actually make sure that it's the same thing. Yeah, because it's not just a matter of different codes. We are dealing with different procedures. So have a look and see if it still applies. Now, in terms of support available, Mitch, what do we have from HMRC?
Well, I think going back to what you've just mentioned there on the links, the volume 3, CDS volume 3 and the tariff has been regularly updated, more so in recent months. And it's being updated regularly and reviewed. So you can see that. So the layout of the CDS Gov homepage is a lot more clearer. It's more structured. Now we have data elements for CDS declarations. It's really easy to go and locate a specific data element and find out the requirements. So before, for those of you that would have searched for chief, for chief error codes, or for support pages on a HMRC, it used to be quite messy and there was not really a lot of structure. But now you can go into CDS volume 3, you can say, okay, I want to look at a data element that's relating to value or net weight or description, and you can go to that data element and it will tell you not only what the requirements are, but also a description of what you need to provide. And it's really clean. Although it might be a bit scary at first, I think when you click into it, you go, wow, there is a lot of information here and there's links everywhere. Once you get used to
when you
using
manage
it,
to get there, yeah.
correct. The initial kind of view is, oh, wow. Once you actually start using it and going in and getting used to the data elements, it becomes an extremely useful tool. I know I personally use it a lot, and I know that my team do, and that the guys in the network do use it a lot. So I think the layout and the information provided is a lot clearer now and easier to locate. And like it says there on the right hand side with the Gov UK homepage, there's all that information about the difference between Chief and CDS. There's the guidance on, like I've just said, with the data elements on how to complete them correctly. With the trade tariff guide, you have up-to-date, correct information on the commodity codes, the requirements for that commodity code, and also you can do filters on that relating to the country that you're exporting to, or it's coming in from if you're doing an import, to look for specific requirements for that country. And also there's descriptions for all the error codes. So that used to be quite a difficult one with Chief. We'd get a random error code that we'd never seen before. and not being able to locate the error and how to fix it. So a lot of Chief used to be quite a lot of trial and error, but now with CDS, as it's been created, we have this log of how to fix these. Well, we used to call them validation failures, but now the CDS error codes. So a lot clearer information, and I think that really helps the traders and the customs agents that are doing the declarations.
Yeah. Now I have I just wanted to talk about codes because you mentioned codes, and you know this is the world of codes. So yes, clearer in terms of error codes, clearer in terms of document codes, a lot of them. Now this we have to be very, very clear about. Many of you will remember that Chief also had codes that we had to quote when it came to authorizations. So for example, you can have under the same commodity code, you can have some products which may contain some prohibited products, for example, dog and cat hair. And then in order to reassure Chief that that wasn't it there, you would have to put a specific code. And CDS works in the same way. Now, in Chief, we had also the ability to override the checks with LIC 99. LIC 99 was, you know, a kind of get out of jail card or get into jail, depending on your point of view, where you basically would say to Chief, please stop checking. I know what I'm doing. I've declared what I need to declare. I don't need to say anything else. We at Chamber Customs always had an issue with that. We didn't find that a very compliant way of approaching life. We prefer to discuss with our customers and making sure that they know what they're declaring. Now, having said that, LIC 99, and this is documented, was wildly abused, and we know through anecdotes and through auditing customers that LIC 99 was often found in standard instructions, which have then created issues for some traders, leading to goods being seized and all sorts. So HMRC swore, promised, and actually said, we are not movable on this point. We do not want a code to override anything. If there are 10 measures on a product, you will have to answer those 10 measures, and there will be a Y code to indicate that you don't need it. So there will be, for example, an N code or a C code or whatever, and then there will be a Y code to say, no, I don't need that document. So no cat and dog hair will be Y, I don't know, 1, 2, 3. And then at some point, they started buckling in their resolve of not doing an override, and they introduced Y999. So instead of LIC 99, they put Y999. Y999 was then removed. So if you knew about Y999, please delete it from your notes because Y999 no longer exists. Instead, we have 999L. There's a reason why it begins with a 9, because codes beginning with a 9 are national codes. Codes beginning with a Y are European codes. So we couldn't use a European code that we invented. So we went to 999L instead. I have to tell you that 999L is temporary, and HMRC has promised and swore, and they're sticking to their guns that this will be removed. I think the date changed twice already. I'm not 100% sure if it's been moved to March next year as well, but it's been extended again. But it is temporary. So yes, you can declare 999L to bypass all the measures that don't apply to your product. And currently that is illegal. That is a compliant approach. You declare 999L in data element 2.3. But you can only declare 999L if the commodity code tells you that this waiver can be used. So it is very different from LIC 99. In Chief, you could just use it. Nobody had to tell you that you could use it. You just could use it. 999L is only available if the tariff says that it's available. And if it doesn't say that it's available because it's considered to be, for example, there is a certain type of control that customs does not want you to bypass easily, then 99L will not be listed on the tariff, and then you know that you have to use the appropriate Y code, which most likely will require you to type some authorization, some explanation, or some information as to why you're bypassing it. I hope that makes it clear. My suggestion, and Mitch, I'm interested in your input, but my suggestion would be don't get used to it. Just don't. It's not safe.
No, I agree. It's temporary. So yeah, we mustn't get used to it, because one day HMRC will take it away, probably without giving us a clear timeline, and then it's kind of, what do we do next? So yeah, definitely don't get used to it.
I just want to be devil's advocate and to bring a smile to somebody's face. LIC 99 was also meant to be temporary, but we know what happened to that.
That's true.
So I think we touched upon the ability to declare additional parties in importer and exporter and why, and that merchandise and baggage declarations can now be filed on CDS. So that's great, and it's moving CDS forward. So Justin, do you want to just go through this just to conclude before we answer the last few questions?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of supporting your move from a Chamber Customs perspective, we are CDS ready. We've actually been filing imports and export declarations for quite some time. And we've been working very closely with HMRC to support them with testing, development, and also helping them provide feedback on what could be improved and added in that respect. So we're working close with HMRC, and I think that's why we're quite advanced in terms of the import and export declarations that we have submitted. We're actually dual running with Chief, so we're not in a position where we've said, look, we've stopped using Chief. We can't do that, because we know for inventory and excise we still have to use Chief. What we are doing, however, as a business, is making that phased move across to CDS. We're working with our teams internally in our network to move across. By kind of November time, we would like to see pretty much all of the row movements being done on CDS, which then only leaves the ones that we cannot physically do right now on Chief until we get an update from HMRC. So we are ready. We're here to support traders with imports and export declarations, and support you with that phased approach across to CDS. If you're representing yourself and doing your own customs declarations, please talk to your software provider for readiness. I know we've already mentioned this. Like we've kept saying throughout this webinar, it's not CDS is not the same as Chief, and although the end result remains the same as having a customs declaration, there is that difference. So we do need to make sure that the software is relevant and up to date and ready for CDS. And also consider the training for your internal staff. So please ensure that they have that time to get used to CDS, looking at the guidance that is available, and also practicing using the technical side of CDS before you consider going live. So in terms of Chamber Customs, we actually offer two customs clearance options within our brokerage team. We have fast track customs clearance, and we have fully assisted customs clearance. So in terms of fast track, we will help you with the clearance in terms of the customs declaration and transit. You actually get direct access to our system, which is called the Exabler portal, which allows you to upload a spreadsheet with all of your data, and using the simplified wizard to enable fast entry and clearance. So there's that kind of side of it where the ball is in your court and you can provide that data and have that fast track. However, if that's something that you would not like to do, then you can use the fully assisted customs clearance, which is that we do all of the work for you. So once you provide us with your commercial invoice, your packing list, and any other supporting documents, we can then take that and submit your customs declaration directly to HMRC through CDS, and we can confirm back once the goods have been cleared at the port and give you that clearance release.
That's great. Thank you, Mitch. So I wonder if, just to conclude, we have only a few minutes left. In terms of the challenges we've been facing, we mentioned some of them, and I think judging from the questions, these are shared. We believe that the main issue that might slow things down for your goods being exported is that you're missing information from the instructions. This will mean that if you're doing your declarations, you're missing, you have to stop and go and ask. If you are a broker, you have to stop, go back to the customer, and that can create delays. In terms of readiness of other parties, I think this has improved a lot from when we started. The supply chain is getting used to CDS. We're not having those anecdotes that we had on day one where people at the border were saying, what is CDS? CDS doesn't work yet, and things like that. So it's getting a lot better. Ports and other infrastructure systems are still being updated to be compatible, and CDS has to be compatible with older systems. So there is still a little bit of work to be done. But I've seen some of the testing, because we like to be trailblazers for HMRC. We like to be involved in testing. We did the first CDS export. We did the first CDS import in the country, so we're very proud of that. And actually, it's working. It's not totally perfect, but it's already working. So I think we might have a chance for March to be ready. Now, we have some questions and answers. I think we've managed to answer most of them, but I'm looking at Marika. Yes, great. So we have some questions on the screen. Are carriers submitting CDS export at the moment? Some are doing, and some are not. I answered another question earlier, Martin, where I know for a fact that UPS has chosen to go on to postpone their move to CDS until March next year, and that's, I believe, is more to do with integration between systems and level of automation that is possible rather than readiness of their staff. So, but some carriers are already using CDS. In fact, I think DHL was one of the first ones testing the system at volume for HMRC. Yes, I thought I answered this one. In terms of freight forwarders, well, yes, if you're filing your declaration, you would need to ask the license plate to your freight forwarder. If not, you would have to say unknown, and then that information would need to be updated later. Now, Tracy, this is an excellent question. What we believe at Chamber Customs, this is more to do with imports. You have the ability to control your own destiny in CDS, and it's a lot easier. So you should register, it's free. You should definitely get a deferment account, that is free. Up to £10,000, you can get a guarantee waiver, and you don't need to pay a broker fee to use their deferment account anymore. Clearly, if that's convenient for you and if you want to use that service, go ahead. But it is a lot easier than what it used to be to do that. And definitely you should use postponed VAT. Now, just to mention, if you want help, if you go onto our website, which is www.chambercustoms.co.uk, you can get in touch with us. There are different options to get our support, from an individual question that you can get answered for £99 to a full consultancy package, or you can even take a free compliance audit. If you visit our website, there are plenty of options and support. In terms of this is a good question, thank you. If you are authorized, if you have an authorization already on Chief, please make sure that you get the correct number, which will start with a GB and then a type of, this is what it looks like, yeah, because your broker will need it. You will need to have that information for your declaration. And I think that's it. I think Katie is asking if we have a template. I think that the slide which will be shared, I think that slide which shows you the delta would help you immensely to add to your instructions. And if not, if you write to us, we'll see what we can do to help you. So I think we've managed to answer everything, and it's 2 minutes past 3, so I think we're on time. Any final thoughts, Mitch?
No, just a big thank you to Marika for managing the question flow today, and a huge thank you to you, Emmanuel, for supporting the webinar today. It's been really informative.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.